Go live. You are live.
Okay, cool. So, hello everybody. Welcome to the final presentation of Criticae, which is PhMuseum first online masterclass dedicated to documentary practice. Here we have all the photographers who were selected and 8 months ago, and I've been working over this period of time with Max Pinckers, who is the main professor, who helped them with the research and with developing one body of work. And together also with Rocco Venezia, who was let's say the referent for PhMuseum. So he followed the class too and supported like the whole project development. He will briefly explain in a bit how this works. But I want to thank everybody, like the photographer who joined this this adventure. Is just the second online masterclass that we are developing, and it's really an honor to have such a great group of photographers. For Max for writing the program and trusting our work. And maybe at the end we can talk a bit more about the whole program that we are developing online. But for today, for now, let's focus on the work presentation, and maybe Max, you have something also to say about this.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Also, thank you for inviting me to for this opportunity to give an online class like this. It's been a really great experience. Like Giuseppe mentioned, it was a program spread over 8 months in which we saw each other every month, I believe, on and off. Sometimes in groups, sometimes individually, and I think one of the nicest things about this online experience is that we get to connect from people spread out all over the world, and still be able to learn from each other. So very different to a traditional classroom, different in many ways. But I think one of the nicest things is that it's quite an international group, a bunch of wonderful artists. So the plan for the workshop that we had developed was, it started with an open call for documentary projects that people could submit in, and then we came down to this group here that will each be presenting the work that they've developed over these past months. And the idea behind the class was to think about documentary photography or documentary practice from many different perspectives. Of course, everybody had their own project, but specifically focus on how we can critically question documentary formats. So as you'll see in the presentations, some people started a completely new project from scratch, basically, so are still in a more kind of conceptual development of their work, or started with thinking about an idea and then putting it together over the period of a few months. Other people already had a pretty much finished body of work that they're trying to put into a sequence, either be it for a book or for an exhibition presentation. So a lot of the projects are in different phases and different stages of their development, which was also very nice to work with. But so the main thing we tried to focus on in this class was to critically reflect on documentary photography, and mainly questioning how, for example, the subject matter that you're working with reflects on how you use the medium photography to try and think about the problematics of documentary making and reflecting them onto the subject that you're working with, or questioning your own position towards the subject that you're working with. So all of these issues were tackled together through discussions and through looking at each other's work and sharing it and developing it over time. So it's been a great pleasure. I'm really looking forward to having these photographers, artists present their work to us.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Giuseppe, for the introduction. Thank you, guys, for the trust in this program. So just some basic info for the viewer from home that are looking at this streaming on YouTube. Each of the participants will have a slot of about 10 minutes where they're going to go through their project they've been developing over these months. And you are free to ask questions to each of them. I will report one question that you can that I can find in the YouTube chat. You can write them in the YouTube chat, and I will report that question to them, one of the questions to them. And Max also will ask one question for each of the participants. So about each of them will have 15 minutes. And at the end of all the 9 presentations, we will disclose a winner or the winners of the prize that also the scholarship is granting, which is the exhibition at PhMuseum Lab, the physical space of PhMuseum here in Bologna. So hope you enjoy this afternoon with so many interesting work, and stay with us until the end to discover the recipient of the grant. So we can start. And the first speaker of the day is Robin, Alicia, Clemens.
Hello. Can I start?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin. I will show you my presentation. This is my name. I'm an Amsterdam-based artist. I work with photography and video as well. I'm first going to show a little bit old work just to get a sense of what I'm doing. Then I'm going to show my new project, which I will present. And my work mainly focuses on kind of the gray area between documentary and art. Sometimes a bit of mise-en-scene, a little bit of fiction, but mainly focusing on documentary narratives. My work revolves around subcultures, identity, cultures, and a sense of community. So this is a project I did about an ex-homeless shelter in Ukraine. This is a project I did in Mexico about Mexican spirituality. So the project I'm going to talk to you about, mainly it's called Performing Adulthood. It's a collaboration between the University of Groningen in the north of the Netherlands and Noorderlicht, which is a photo collective studio kind of thing. So basically it started with them giving me basically an assignment to create a body of work around the theme Generation Z. But
Sorry, Robin, we don't see your screen.
Oh, let's try this again. Let's see. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
You didn't miss much. I'm going to go through it quickly. So this was just an introduction slide. So this is a project I did, my Ukrainian project. And this is a project I did in Mexico. So the project I'm going to talk about is called Performing Adulthood. They gave me an assignment to create a body of work with the team Gen Z. But I got a complete carte blanche to kind of fill it in my own way to create something that I wanted to do. It was really cool, but at the same time quite difficult because it's such a broad subject. Normally, when I do kind of my own projects, I focus on smaller, a little bit more intimate stories. So this was kind of more, maybe the first project where I actually had to find a way to conceptually visualize a theme and create a narrative with my project rather than tell a narrative that's already there, if you get a sense of what I'm saying. So it is a photography and video project, mainly actually a video project. So that's actually also quite new for me, at least. It's mainly about what it means to grow up. For Generation Z, I focused on the ages between 16 and 24, and also about how young people portray themselves, especially in a world where visual representation is more important than ever. I invited young people to come to the studio and portray themselves with a remote, and then allowed them to select and curate the photos that they took of themselves afterwards. So they kind of could curate their own self-image. I filmed this process, as you can see, and therefore you're also witness to the moments that are not posts, so the moments where their performance, quote unquote, fails. In my previous work, I've already been kind of interested in making work that has a kind of collaborative aspect to it. And I think especially within the documentary genre, you can gain a lot when you change the traditional roles of the person in front of the camera and the person behind the camera, which I kind of experimented a little bit with here as well. So these are the contact sheets that kind of were the result of the photo shoots. So in the end, not the final images, but the contact sheets, the process itself became the final work. I'm actually building up an exhibition right now. It will open on Saturday. So if any of you is in the neighborhood, let me know. It's in the north of the Netherlands. And it will show 20 different frames of these contact sheets with their own kind of curation written on it, together with the videos that you just saw. So in addition to these self-portraits, I also filmed 6 different scenes in which groups of friends talk to each other about certain topics, online dating, friendship, death, climate change, loneliness, social media. And these scenes are really kind of, again, how they present themselves, but this time maybe not per se to the camera, although I think the camera is also a big part of the scene, but mainly how they also present themselves to each other. I'm going to show you 3 or maybe 4 different scenes, but only like half a minute or a minute of it, so you kind of get an idea about it. Let's see if I play.
Nou, ik heb dus soms, ik ben altijd onder de mensen 's avonds, maar soms ik heb ook gewoon behoefte om alleen op mijn kamer te zitten. En luister ik muziek, nou, helemaal leuk. En op een gegeven moment komt er een punt dat ik denk, ja, en nu? En dan ga ik dus op een Tinder of op een suk, of meer heb ik ook niet. Even swipen. Precies, en dan ga ik dus even swipen.
Second love.
Nee joh. Nee, dat is te veel. Maar dan denk ik dus, oh leuk. Maar dat doe ik dan op een avond. En dan heb je een gesprek van 1 uur, zeg ik maar. En op een gegeven moment, na die dag, ben je weer onder de mensen. En
dan is het klaar.
Ik ben
als je met mensen bent, denk je er ook niet meer aan. Als je alleen bent, dan heb je dat gesprek. Maar als je dan weer met mensen bent, dan denk je ook, oh, die is ook weer aan de kant geschoven.
Ja.
Ik denk nog dat jongens met een lang dik en een lang skateboard.
Ja, dit is wel skater girl.
Ja, ik val wel op skaters eigenlijk. Ook wel op pijn om toe te geven.
Ja, het is wel zo. Helaas.
Maar gewoon, ze hebben iets, ik weet niet.
Ja, ze zijn meestal gewoon lekker.
Nou,
gewoon die kledingstijl.
Ja, de kledingstijl, maar de meeste skaters zelf zijn echt niet lekker.
Niet?
Nee man. Echte skaters hebben van een lang haar en zo. Dat zijn echt skaters. Gewoon die niet eens douchen. Maar ja, Gohan had ook niet goed douchen.
Ja, dat merkt er nog steeds.
Ze hebben gewoon een manier van hoe ze naar de wereld kijken. Want iemand die business studeert of economie, kijk, die kan best wel heel knap zijn, maar je hebt sowieso een bepaalde verwachting of outlook op het leven. Dus dan denk ik, nee.
Ja.
Deze leeftijd, je weet toch, wanneer mensen tegen jou zeggen, je gaat misschien maar 2, 3 vrienden overhouden van de thema's die je hebt. Het is geen cap. Want je weet toch, er is laatst ook iemand geweest, backstabbing move bij mijn chicken man.
Die jongen van me.
Dus die jongen is ook weg. Die zien we ook nooit meer.
Sorry man.
We mixen niet met dat, dus zo onzeker heb ik ook.
Je weet wie het is.
Je weet niet dat het echt met je is. Snap je?
Broer, ik ken die man, broer. Ik zeg jou, hè. Buiten jumping ken ik die man het langst. Spanja.
Hoe lang
Deze gaat je raken. 10 dagen. Maar dat is zo ken ik die man.
Hé broer, zal ik zeggen gewoon wat? Zal ik zeggen gewoon wat?
Ik ga hem niet zeggen om noepie.
Pussy.
Nee, man.
En dat is waar het vaak om gaat.
Ja, het gaat aan een vrouw, man. Ik ben zo heel vaak.
Ik ben blij dat het op vrouwen gaat, bro. Het staat andere toe.
Ja, dat zou ik eens pakken.
En de laatste.
Maar waar zien jullie dan over 10 jaar?
10 jaar?
Ja. Sowieso rijk. Sowieso. Ik heb altijd gewoon een droom gehad. Sinds ik 6 was, kreeg ik een déjà vu. Ik was rijk. En
Ik voel je.
En dat is gewoon wat gaat gebeuren.
Ja.
Ik geloof daar gewoon heel sterk in. Ik heb ook zelfs tegen mijn moeder gezegd van... Luister, als ik niet over 10 jaar minimaal... of hoe heet het, maximaal 10 jaar... een paar ton op mijn rekening heb staan... dan ben ik gewoon officieel delusional. Want ik geloof er 100% in dat ik sowieso met iets ga ik rijk worden. En dat gaat met muziek zijn, weet je. Dat is gewoon...
Job voor jezelf uitspreken, dat is goed.
Het is gewoon een live ding, man. Ik voel hem zo hard. En weet je wat het is? Het is van, waarom niet 100% erin geloven? Wat heb je te verliezen?
Ja.
We zweven letterlijk op een planeet. We weten niet waar we zijn, want het heelal is zo groot. Soms ik kijk satellietbeelden wanneer ik wat heb gesmokt, toch? En dan zie ik gewoon van, de aarde is zo klein. Er zijn zoveel gebieden die wij geen eens kennen. Volgens mij, we kennen misschien 3 of 4% van de hele oceaan. Dus ik heb gewoon... Snap wat ik bedoel? Dus het is gewoon van... Dat zijn gewoon mooie dingen, weet je?
That's it.
Thank you, Robin. Max, you have any question for Robin?
Yeah, thanks for that nice presentation, Robin. It was nice to see the work with the full subtitles as well. We finally understand what they're saying.
Finally,
Yeah.
although it's also good for me because some of them are talking a lot of slang, so I had to translate it with their help.
Yeah. So with the last couple of videos that you showed, there's this interesting tension between having this mise en scène, this kind of set frame in which this tableau happens, this scene plays out, and it feels somehow constructed on a visual level because it's so set and it's nicely framed and composed and so on. But at the same time, there's this spontaneity, there's this very natural way that the Gen Z people behave and openly talk about quite private things often. And I think bringing those two things together, as you did in the videos, creates this tension where you don't quite know how it's staged or in how far it's scripted or in how far the people are indeed aware of the camera being there or not. All of these questions start arising, and I'm wondering if you can say something more about how you managed to make those videos in that way without being all too present, by getting the people to be so comfortable in front of the camera, to create this natural mise en scène, let's say.
I think it was also quite a challenge for me because it's the first time that I've been working with video in a documentary sense, or documentary, whatever you call documentary. What did I do? I don't know. I was there sometimes for a long time. And some people were a bit more natural than others. Like some of them were a bit more strained to get like a natural conversation going. So with some, for example, the 3 girls on the bed, I didn't have to feed them anything, basically. Sometimes I had to ask, like, can you repeat what you just said or something? But most of the time, they just had a very cool, natural energy going on. With the guys at the car as well. And I had another scene which I didn't show where it was a little bit more difficult. So then I went back another time. And then I actually had to kind of feed them a little bit more subjects, like subjects that are a bit more current or a bit more about being young and being young now. because I was kind of trying to find kind of themes, what they talked about, which were either about the age now, so living in 2022, so talking about kind of the housing crisis, climate change, that kind of stuff, or kind of topics that really are in a broader sense interesting to young people in general. And yeah, so I mean, I just kind of, I set up the camera and then I just told them, you know, talk about it and kind of try to forget the camera. And then sometimes I would, if they say something very interesting, I would ask them to maybe repeat something, but I would try to be as far away as possible, but at the same time, kind of do guide kind of their conversations a little bit. Yeah, so with some people I was more present than with others.
And in terms of defining the frame of the camera or the kind of formal decisions that go into building up an image like that, were there any strategies that you discovered that worked better when framing a group in order to have like different levels of depth, or to see everybody at the same time while the focus switches between the different characters?
To be fair, I found it quite difficult because I did everything by myself. So you had to do the audio and the direction and the camera and everything else. And with photography, it's a bit more kind of controlled. It's easier. There's less to worry about. So I think the framing with some works better. We talked about it as well. I think especially with video, it works very well if there's a bit more depth, if people kind of can also go a little bit maybe sometimes out of the frame or inside the frame. It creates a little bit more tension. And with some, I think with some of the images I managed that, and with some a little less. So that was kind of the thing that is kind of my learning experience for next time. Don't do video by yourself. Take someone with you. So then I can really focus on only the camera and the directing and not also have to worry about all the other stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of, for me, it's kind of always important. Then it kind of looks nice a little bit, that the light's nice. And then, but for next time, I would want to experiment more with scenes where people actually also leave the frame a little bit more, where there's a little bit more spontaneity in the image, I think. That's it.
Thank you again, Robin, for presenting your work. So we can go to the next one, which is Xuan-Phong Lee, photographer based in Vietnam. So please feel free to share your screen from.
Hey guys, hello from Vietnam. So Xuan-Phong. I'm a documentary photographer based here in Hanoi, Vietnam, and I'm actually sitting in the gallery of Masterclass Space Photography, where I'm having my first ever solo show of the project that I work with everyone here on the Criticae documentary masterclass. So I just want to shiver around for a bit before I start my presentation, because I have a rotating table. Yeah, so I'm gonna share my screen. And guys, please tell me if you're seeing my screen now. Yeah, great. Let me get in full screen. It's in full screen now, right? So I'm going to be presenting about Until Next Time, one of my very personal projects this is the project that I developed during the duration of the masterclass. But before I talk about the work, I just want to do a shameless plug and share about the space and the project that I'm working on. So I'm part of a Masterclass Space for Photography. So this Vietnam's premier space currently dedicated to photography. We do shows. This is an artisan gallery where we do shows like empowering very young emerging photographers in the scene. So if anyone can type out the address in the chat, that would be very lovely. But now I'm going to be presenting about my work. So I'm going to start by telling my story and how I started working on this project, and then later I'm going to be sharing more about the exhibition that I'm in right now. So to start with, I'm going to be explaining about this phenomenon where it's called in Vietnamese. It's called Chu Tang, and we don't have a correct translation, but I'm going to be loosely translating into the overlap mourning. So it's a phenomenon where someone passes away, and then we go to a Buddhist monk or a shaman, and we get a divination where the monk will look at the time of death and predict whether it was a good time or a bad time. So back in 2018, when my grandma passed away, my family went to a monk and to get the divination, and the divination came out really bad. So it's going to be a really bad case of overlap mourning, and like we went to a few months to make sure, but like everyone told us that 2 other family members were going to pass away. And that same year, my dad and my uncle passed away. So it was a very traumatic experience for us, because it was like the first time where we had to like do so much mental preparation for someone passing away, and we all became very aware of our own mortality. And personally, it was my very first like close experience with so many loved ones passing away. So I became so it was very traumatic, and I became very aware of my own mortality as well. So I just want to say that I don't have an easy experience with death, because like all of my, even after that year, like 2019, 2020, last year, and also very recently as well, like every year someone will pass away. And it's just a coincidence, but everybody passed away like after a long period in the hospital. So we always have like this very, very traumatic period where we prepare for the passing away of our loved ones. So we just spent really a lot of time just waiting in the hospitals. And after the fact that there is something as every funeral is the same. So in Vietnam, I think like the process of death in Vietnam is quite a universal experience, because like we have very specific procedures and rituals for transitioning someone to the afterlife. Like every single time, like there will be a mourning ceremony where the family would be standing there and to greet the people who came to mourn the dead. So every time we would be standing there for 1-2 hours, just greeting, just nodding our head and offering our prayers. So I was mentioning about the preparation, like the mental preparation, but then also the logistical preparations of one's death, like the paperwork and the procedures. They just don't give us any time to be sad, you know. It offered this strange calmness because we were so prepared, and also like just every funeral is the same, like exactly the same. After the funeral, we'll wake up early in the next morning, go to the countryside for the burial. So I just kept photographing these occasions, and eventually I have, like you can see behind me, I have all these images, and also I have these visual echoes where the same scene happened again and again during these funerals. And I just happened to be always in the hearse, like next to the coffin, because I was a young person in the house. I can carry heavy stuff. So during these times, like now when I look back at it, I think the camera was acting as a shield, because I was shooting with this very, very old, quite broken point shoot camera. So I was looking at everything through this very tiny, like pea-sized viewfinder. So I think the purpose of this work and this exhibition for me is to ponder like photography as a coping mechanism. So after the fact, like after all these funerals, there would be these periods where we finally get to return to everyday life, because I was talking about the waiting. I just, to me, during those funerals, I don't really feel pain or sadness. It's the most overwhelming feeling for me is always I'm just bored, you know. I just want things to pass by faster so I can finally go home. So, and home just kind of offers this kind of comfort, but also at the same time, nothing's the same anymore. So after those funerals, I work on these other images. There are these color still lifes of these domestic details. And to me, they offer this calmness and also the sense of acceptance. They are like representations of this this attempt to connect with someone who had passed away. So this is the image on the right is like this cup of wine that I offered on the altar to my dad who passed away. This is an image of this habit that my grandma and grandpa used to have, and where they taught us to just collect these used rubber bands on the doorknob, and it's something that we all do to this day. Though they pass away, and it just reminds us of them. Just an image of me and my girlfriend. I think it's just like everyday life, you know. This is when my cats they knocked over the altar photo and it broke the frame, so I had to glue it together again, like many times. So the color images to me just present a sense of contrast. You know, they contrast the black and white images I have in my archive already. So now I'm going to be talking a bit about the exhibition. So I think I forgot to mention that these images for me, these black and white images for me, I think is something that's very hard for me to look at. So in the past, I've tried to show it around, show it to other people, but I think I've always stuck with like these very modest edits of like, maybe I would bring like a small portfolio of like 15 prints or make a little 20 pages zine. So it's just I think it's like a secret, you know. I don't want to show these images, and I also don't know what to do with them. So something that during this workshop at this masterclass, that something that Max said that really stuck with me was like he said that I need to create a sense of distance between me and the work, because I'm always like self-censoring. I'm always like trying to edit, trying to like find my favorite photo when I have like all these visual echoes, all these duplicated images of this repetition of actions. And during my edits, with these like models and 15 or 20 images, I was always trying to like find that sense of repetition by picking my favorite image. So that was something I didn't want to do anymore, as I just print them out and I just treat them as equal, you know. Just so I'm no longer judging them by aesthetic or content. So by representing everything in a wall like this, also I'm sorting them by chronological order. It's my way of confronting what has happened, and also like just pondering whether photography can help one with processing their grief and pain. And I think a very interesting thing that I managed to achieve by displaying the work like this is that I gave the audience a choice. They can either like the prints are very small, so they can either come in very close, like 10 centimeters from the prints to look at the details, or they can just take a few step backs and look at the whole thing as like an abstract wall of black and white spots, you know. And also it was, I think the process of creating this exhibition to me is like it was a very surreal experience, because these images, I think they are not easy to look at for anyone, let alone like me who have such a connection with them. And every time I ordered these prints, they would come in and from the lab like unsorted. So I would have to like sort like all 102,000 photos of them, like one by one. So it was like the isolation process to me was like retracing my step like through a whole journey these past few years again. And also for the exhibition, I just I framed some of these color images and put them on the ledge. It's a very instinctual thing that I think I'm doing before to replicate the way I would display these images at home, just to give it a more domestic touch compared to the very extreme wall of black and white images. And also this images I just put it on a separate wall because I think it's the only thing in my exhibition that can be considered like a archival material, because it's my only proper photo that I took of my dad our like very memorable experience before all these funerals before he passed away. So it's quite special to me. And also I have these, I don't know how well this is going to translate over Zoom. So I have these images on my PhMuseum profile. So I don't know if Rocco can post it in the chat as well. Yeah, but I think that's it for my presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Phong. It was nice to see how all it came up together, also in the physical space.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
I can imagine.
Thanks, Phong. Yeah, I remember since the beginning that you were working on this. You kept saying that it was a project that wasn't initially meant to be shown to a public, let alone yourself having, you know, difficulties looking at the work. Maybe you can say something about the process for you that you went through of eventually making an exhibition out of it, and the steps that you went through and the kind of reasoning you went through in showing this very personal work to an audience.
Well, I think, yeah, in the beginning, it was very hard for me to look at or talk about these images. And I think it's changed a lot to be able to give a presentation like this. Also, like my exhibition opened yesterday, so I've been talking to some people. And it was nice to be able, I think the way I talk about the work now is a lot more coherent and a lot more honest. You know, I'm not trying to hide things. Also, like with these kind of images, I don't have anything more to hide. Whereas they were like literally sitting in the box, like up on my shelf, and I just, back then, like every once in a while, in a few months, I would like try to edit them for something, and nothing would work for me. Everything just seems kind of wrong. So I mean, these are very personal images, you know. The idea of like displaying them like in their entirety like this is like a confrontation. So I'm trying to confront my problems head on, and I don't know if it managed to solve anything, or maybe I'm just more numb to these images. But I think it's an open question. And yeah, you go first, Max.
Yeah, so you've made the installation in the space, which has a very particular way of showing it. But during your presentation, you also briefly showed some images of a dummy book. Yeah. And maybe you can say something about the difference in approach for you between the book form and the installation that you've made.
I think in my previous exchanges with you, I think at the beginning of this masterclass, I was insisting on making it into a book, right? Because I think to me, the book and the exhibition are two polar opposites of each other. The exhibition, like in this kind of space, is like very public. It's meant for other people to be seen and interpret. And the reason why I wanted to do a book, because it just has personal meaning to me, you know. It's like a book is like one-on-one. It's like an exchange between one viewer and the author. And also just the idea, like the book, you can always close it at any time. It's very different to this kind of wall of images. So to me, the book will always be something very intimate, very personal. But that doesn't mean like displaying work in a gallery like this can be not personal, you know.
Thank you a lot, Phong. So we can go to the next speaker, which is Suzan Pektas.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I am Suzan Pektas and Istanbul-based photographer. And actually Istanbul-based photographer, and I try to explore various forms of visual arts and documentary photography since 2015. And actually my primary focus during my project is women, immigration, and urban transformation. Today I will present my work, Naomi, which I started in 2017 actually. Until now, it's an ongoing project. I should share my screen now. Are you able to see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is Naomi. I started this project 2017, and it's a kind of multimedia project which includes images, video, and some performative videos actually. And it's about African immigrant woman. I met her in 2017 during the Face of Africa Turkey beauty contest. And immediately I started to interest in her life and what she is doing in point of view, why she came here, from where, and what she wants to do actually. I can say that we have some similarities at that point. I was born and raised in Bulgaria and moved to Turkey in 19th. And since then, when I was a teenager actually, and since then I kept on searching for my own portrait. I think it overlaps with some of my identities, like being an immigrant, being woman, being mother, and these kind of things. And I am always curious about how other people and women and immigrants experience the same journey, actually. Through each immigrant walks a similar trail, but there is always a personal story. And I'm a little bit curious about this personal story, actually. And I ask myself some question like, what is home? Why we moved to another place? What is the reason? And who and what we left behind, what is found in the new land, and what we dream or they dream to do for their future in this new land. And Naomi came from Sierra Leone in 2015 because of Ebola case, and she settled down in Istanbul. She was 22 when she came. And really, when we met at first, I intrigued by her, and I wanted to see again her. And this is how actually the project starts. Then we got closer to each other, and our relation became more layered and intense, I can say in this way. And actually, this forced us together to more slow down and and this gave time to, we need to connect to each other or to build a more personal connection with each other. So we started to meet each other regularly during this project. Key content of this project is images. I included some documentary images, some stage one videos, family albums, and I want to question actually what is the reality, what is the fiction, and what is the power of both image maker and subject through this project actually. I divided with project. There are a couple of topics that I especially focused on. These are first immigration and integration, how we integrate to another country, to another place, and our struggles, what are. Another topic is dreams and the dreams, landscape of the dreams. what is our dreams and how they evolve with the landscape and the places we move to. And the last one is about the contradictions and dualities, actually. This is not just contradictions that these people or subjects include, but the contradictions of the what we are doing together, actually. What is the starting point, how our relation evolve in time. As a photographer or as a visual artist, what is my role, where to stand as a photographer, as a person, as a human. I ask myself many questions during this project, which was one of the most important part of the process, I think. And maybe last contradiction is about trying to capture someone visually, which sometimes is not possible. So this is one of the struggle I had during this project. So the first part is about migration and the landscape of the dreams, I already told. And the main question was who and what is left behind, what is found in new land, and what do they dream for the future. This is the Naomi's actually family tree, a kind of, and three main figures in her life: her auntie, her grandma, and her father. Actually, father is absent, but I think his absence also give a power to Naomi to move forward in a kind of way. This is grandma, which is one of the biggest role model in her life, and she's a kind of feminist. Naomi called her in this way. The country faced many social and political issues like civil war and Ebola. And then in 2015, Naomi had to move from Sierra Leone. So I tried to visualize her path during 2 years, starting from Sierra Leone until Turkey, which takes actually 1.5 years from when she moved from Sierra Leone to come to Turkey. This is a kind of migration map, or moving map, but in time it evolves to more what she wants to do in her life and about her dreams, actually, including all aspects of all countries that she visits, what she did in these countries, what struggle in these countries, and including some quotes from this path. These are a kind of self-portrait of us, because this is Naomi's story, but in the meantime is also my story. Because the main question is maybe how we perceive immigrants as a foreigner, or as an immigrant, as a person, as a human. So I try to make a bridge between us, hand to hand, and support each other to make her life easier, better. Because I had the same struggle when I was 13, when I moved to Turkey. Then actually I met a really nice and kind person, which helped me a lot to integrate to life more easily. So I tried to experience the same thing with Naomi, which she really wants at that time a lot. At that part, I will talk a little bit about dreams and spirituality, what she wants to do in her life, her dreams, etc. Actually, I can say when I met her in 2017. She just talking about modeling, but I asked many questions to her about modeling is not enough. It is not single dream. You should do something more, like education. What you want to do? Ask many questions to her, and she answered like, I want to make a modeling, resume my education, founding my foundation for girls in Sierra Leone. I want to giving back to my country. So we started to collaborate how she wants to explore her own path, and started to walk together side by side.
Sorry, Suzan, since
Yeah.
we have to be aware of time,
Okay.
maybe through a question of Max, we can sum up
Okay.
the full project again.
Okay, just 2 minutes, and
Yeah.
I'm going through the
Okay.
photograph and images. This is about dreaming part, what she already done. And a little bit about contradiction and dualities, like multi-personality, and using wigs as a metaphor to multi-personality here. Her family, very matriarchal family. She has 3 brothers, but very matriarchal family. She attended Islamic secondary school, but had baptism certificate when she was 17. Her father was Christian, her mother is Muslim, living in Turkey, Muslim country. The contrast, their life, daily and night life. This is more about contradiction. They also experience. And finally, we also had some struggles with Naomi, personal struggles between us, and our relation evolved in time. This is my main questions, but I included just 1 or 2 messages here. There are many messages, but with her permission, I just include these 2 messages for now. I think that's all. I can came here.
Thank you, Suzan. Maybe we have still time for a quick question by Max.
Also note to the audience, if people are listening in, don't hesitate to drop some questions in the chat that Rocco can convey to us. Thank you, Suzan. I think it would, a question that I would ask is, in terms of your collaboration with Naomi, is in the last message, in the last chat of the last slide, we got a sense of how Naomi looks at the project, looks at your relationship, and kind of your photos seem to help her modeling career forward. But I'm curious to know a little bit more about the relationship between you two working on this project and how she partakes in the process, let's say, beyond using the photos for her own career, because she seems to be very open to you and easy to pose for your camera, and there seems to be a nice working relationship going on between you two. So I might be curious if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Actually, at the starting point, we don't trust each other. That was the main struggle, and it took like 3 or 4 months to get better in communication and start to shooting. I think this is about trust, because I told her that without her permission, I couldn't do anything. So she really saw that I didn't do anything about her, what we talk, what we share. So she started to trust me. And we always talk about how she wants to be presented. And she always wants to present more in a beautiful way, like include things that I already achieved, like my foundation, like modeling career, my education, my entrepreneur part, my diplomacy, my relation with embassy, or this kind of things. So I think the concepts we created is mutual. I couldn't decide it by myself. Maybe I can include some other things that we shoot in private, but I skip them sometimes because she didn't permit to share with others. So the all things that I included in my project present is with her permission. And I think it's more about supporting someone, and through this path, just transforming yourself, I think, because what I want in my life, I want to be more a kind of transforming momentum in my life, because I constantly learn through the process. It's a kind of instinctive and raw process. We are together, we are sharing, we are telling stories to each other. And through that process, I learn, I transform myself. And it's the same for herself, I think, for her. We shared something. She wants to move forward. I am with her. And she starts to achieve something in her life because she knows that someone is by her side and support her.
Okay, thank you, Suzan.
Thank you, Suzan. If you can please stop sharing so that
sure.
We go to the next speaker. I introduce Oana Nekifor, Romanian photographer.
Hello. I'm going to share my screen. So I'm Oana. I'm a photographer based in Iași, Romania. And for this masterclass, I have developed a project, documentary photography project on the Romanian diaspora. So I'm also focusing on the theme of on the issue of migration. So I don't want to say too much about the subject itself, not to get bored, but some background information, I think it's important. Just that between 3 and 5 million Romanian migrants have migrated out of a 90 million population, which would be like roughly 1 out of 5 Romanians, and it has one of the largest growing diaspora, and the phenomena is important due to its social, cultural, and economic implications. And I have focused mainly on the countries in Western Europe, which accumulate the largest communities for Romanians. But my interest into this topic comes more from a personal perspective, because my mother has left Romania to work in Spain when I was 14, and afterwards both my brothers have also left, and I am including also their stories into this project. So among the documentary strategies that I have focused on is the self-reflexive dimension and the first-person diaristic style. And I have included these performative images and different aesthetics responding to each situation. So the project is still ongoing, but as a final outcome will be a photo book, and I'll be presenting parts of the latest version of a dummy that I have been working on. So it has the structure of the photo book is composed of 3 parts. The first is about the women in migration, and the second part is mostly about men or the typical Romanian laborer, and the third one is about the families that have settled. So I build up with my mother's story, and I have included some of her images of the photographs that I have taken where she currently works and lives. And then there is this performative dimension where it's about me playing the role of my mother. So for a week, I worked as a caretaker for an old woman in Musque, Spain. And I have tried to document the whole experience through self-portraits, through more observational images where I'm personalizing the space I was living by photographing it. And also I have kept a diary during the whole time, and which I try to keep this experience, and also in this first part, but throughout the whole photo book, this diary entries are an important component. And then the structure continues with these several stories in between of either Romanians that I have known beforehand and reconnected with them, or person that I have only met and allowed me to have a glimpse into their life as migrants. I'm focusing both on the geographical variety of their destination as well as on the diversity of labors that they are doing. And then the photo book ends with my brother's story, who has also started a life elsewhere and currently lives with his family in the north of London. So each story or situation, sometimes I have approached it with a different style, visual style or aesthetics. And I have mainly responded to what I have encountered there, and didn't exactly go with some preconception of how I will document the whole thing. And I have tried to construct this dam as a reflection of this journey, adapting this confessional or diaristic tone in the text, trying to get away from the journalistic report and trying to zoom in and out at the same time, getting to know closer these people, but also trying to maintain a distance at the same time in order to have this broader view upon the phenomenon. And one of the issues that I have struggled at the beginning of the project as well was my own positioning. And in the end, it turned out to be one self-reflexive and subjective and intimate, although I have also included this type of observational shots or anthropological aspect to it. But what unifies all the stories is the text, which is written in a diary style. I'm still working on the text. And it will be written at the first person, recounting my own experience of this journey. I don't want necessarily to try and speak in their name. I just want to tell and show what I have encountered and how I have experienced their life. And so it's this interplay between the objective or observational images and the subjective or metaphorical ones. And I have also tried to get this first-hand knowledge about the Romanian migration and see how the diaspora kind of looks like, because it's often been described as a whole, but it's far from a unity. It's being composed by different stories. And each experience is individual and unique. And I also tried to see these different experiences. Although I have started my journey looking for patterns or for stereotypes, most of the time it so happened that I have encountered just the exceptions. And I also wanted to go for the in-between, and the majority of the diaspora and how it's represented by this normal-looking and hard-working people that do their best at integrating in the host countries. And instead of applying the same template, the same method, I've rather adapted to each story. So that would be like the end of the presentation, because I have a lot of images, but I don't want to take up too much time. Thank you.
Thank you, Oana. Thank you.
Oana. Yeah, I find it fascinating to see how you've woven together these different documentary approaches where on the one hand, you take on a more observational position where you visit and photograph Romanians that have from the diaspora that are doing all sorts of different jobs abroad. But on the other hand, you've also kind of in a performative way stepped into your mother's footsteps or into your mother's role as a caretaker and kind of got a job yourself and lived with an elder lady and documented the process. or then visited your brother, who's also part of your family that's living abroad. So there's another personal connection, and you bring all of these different ways together in the book. Might be interesting to hear how that was like for you, or what kind of documentary strategy that you that you found most interesting, or maybe what the differences were from an experience in terms of using these different approaches.
So how was my experience documenting it? Or can you just please repeat the question?
Yeah. So on the one hand, you're kind of centering yourself in the center of the little story or the chapter, where you yourself are the person that you're documenting pretty much as an experience of being a caretaker and kind of performing that. And in another part of the work, you're kind of looking in from outside, even though you yourself are also Romanian, you're more observing and documenting something. And was there a difference for you in maybe the documentary value of those kind of images or that kind of approach? Or is one maybe, how is it different for you in terms of what those different strategies say or contribute to your story? Is there a different value for you in the sense that you yourself are performing something? Or when you're observing other Romanians and photographing them, do you see that as how is there a difference for you between those things, those different approaches, or can you seamlessly bring them together in a larger story?
No, there is definitely a difference, the performative ones being much harder to make. And I didn't have much of experience with that, so it was definitely stepping outside of the box of the comfort zone, and it does bring more value, being my own experience, as I also wanted to include this first-hand experience, as I had done it before, but a lot more than 7 years ago, but I didn't actually document it. So now when I started this project in the migration, I really wanted to include this experience as well. And yes, I feel much more comfortable with the observer position, and but I think it's not enough.
And then you of course have the layer of the diaristic text, which is a first-person account always from how you engage with the people, and there is also kind of personal approach to it.
Yes.
Suppose, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you, Oana.
Thank you, Zor.
Thank you, Oana. Thank you. We go to the next speaker, which is Henri, Heiro.
Hey, I'm gonna share my screen just real quick. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So my name is Henri Airo. I'm a visual artist from Finland. I work mainly with photography, but also with text, archival material, then some video and photogrammetry. A bit about my background. I recently graduated with a BA from this Lahti Institute of Design and Fine Arts here in Finland. And at the moment I'm teaching photography at a folk high school in Helsinki where I live, and I work on my own projects on the side. In my work, my subject matter often kind of revolves around social phenomena that's somehow linked to me or to my life or to my surroundings, but I'm very interested in this idea of what art historian Sophie Berby has described as the dialectical document, where you're engaging a subject matter, but at the same time you're somehow commenting on or addressing the tools that you're using to represent that subject. And that's something that kind of goes through my work in a sense. So today, I'm going to be, second, get this working. I'm going to be presenting a project titled Probable Cause. It's a research-based documentary project that deals with alcoholism and alcohol-related crime in Finland through a story to which I have a very personal attachment. And as you can see with the images scrolling on the screen now, the final work takes the form of a photobook, and I'm presenting some excerpts from it. It's not finished yet, especially the types and things like this are complete sketches. So I'm going to be talking a bit about the book, the structure, and the process of making the book. And the background of the project is very personal for me. The story that the book follows is related to my sister was killed in 2012, so about 10 years ago in Helsinki by a drunk driver in a hit and run. And of course, for me and my family, this is a very large part of dealing with loss and grief and things like this. It's been a very big part of our lives. And this project started in 2018 when I read through the police report of the case for the first time. When it happened, I was 15. I was not really involved with any of the bureaucracy or the justice system and things like that. Of course, the perpetrator was sentenced at the time and there was a trial and so forth. But what I do remember from the time was how it was covered in the Finnish media, because my sister was quite young and the perpetrator had 6 prior convictions for drunk driving. And so it created quite a big media sensation in a way, and a big discussion about alcoholism and drunk driving in Finnish society. And at the time, there was a very divided narrative. There's on the one side, this kind of monster who's incapable of thinking about others and who was completely kind of beyond understanding, and then this innocent victim. But then again, the media was very interested in my sister, and what was one very traumatic thing for my parents especially was how the media tried to get information from them during the whole proceedings with the trials and things like that. And when I read the police report, this kind of narrative, for me, it kind of revealed all these nuanced things that I hadn't known about before, and opened up kind of another world to this event, in that there was a lot of things like relating to societal views on addiction, how people who surround someone with an alcohol problem deal with it, and how the justice system in Finland deals with alcohol-related crime. That was there was a lot of these reasons that I learned about how that were behind the case. And this project started as kind of an idea to create a kind of in-depth narrative, or a research-based narrative, as a kind of, not maybe a counter narrative, but some kind of option to this narrative that the media proposed at the time. So in the first part of the project, I did a lot of research. I went through archives of different news reports, media relating to the event. I met people around the case and went through the police files very in depth to kind of get an understanding of how this had happened. And in this project, I'm also very interested in the way, I'll stop the slides here for a minute, in the way that documentary imagery and news imagery and police imagery functions within this case and this event. And on the level of the form in the work, I'm trying to take a critical stance towards these conventions of documentary photography, but also trying to kind of deconstruct different power relations, kind of rooted in indexicality or aesthetics that function in these images. So in this book, Dummy, I've used different methods for producing images. So kind of broadly divided into 3 different subgroups. So the first is there are some scenes places, of objects that are related to the crime, and then there are scenes of objects that are not directly related, but which are somehow standing in for things that would otherwise be related. So, for example, the perpetrator worked in a metal workshop, but that doesn't exist anymore. So I've gone to many different metal workshops and photographed a large amount of pictures from them, and then kind of made this into the narrative, this metal workshop from those pictures. Then some of the pictures we see reenactments by actors, and some of the actors are original persons playing themselves, and others are actors that I've directed based on my research. And in some of the pictures, we see these kind of police imageresque, low-res pictures. And in these, some of them are pictures from the police reports from media, and then others are images that I've staged and then processed in a way that they kind of follow these tropes of police imagery. So the idea is that in this final book, all these different pictures come together and they tell this narrative that focuses on the perpetrator on the day of the hit and run and kind of follows him throughout the day and highlights these different places. And then together with these images, there's text fragments from message boards on the internet, from the interrogation transcripts especially, and from other sources where people describe these events and which describe different details that relate to the events. And together, the idea is that it forms this whole that recontextualizes all the material, and kind of all these different pictures start to tell this one story. And I thought that for this presentation, it might also maybe be interesting that I talk a little bit about these thoughts during this workshop that I've had on kind of staging and recontextualizing images and these different choices that I've made during the process. And especially in the beginning of making this work, there was I felt that there was very constricting idea of this, you could say, honesty to the truth, or more like an obligation to details, that when I was staging things, I wanted everything to be the same, that the places had to be the same, the details, for example, the car or the make of the car and things like this, they had to be exactly as they are described in the documents that I based my research on. And this, of course, in many cases, which is completely impossible. There's always some small thing you overlook, or then there's something is just not possible, like the metal workshop doesn't exist anymore. And throughout this workshop, I kind of started to understand that maybe it's not the way that in this expanded documentary practice that these images work, that's actually a very similar way to how, for example, the police uses images, which is something I'm kind of critiquing in the work. And I kind of started to think of it more as leaving room for interpretation and creating more connections between these materials for the viewer to create meaning to them. So, for example, the ways that in this final dummy version that I've made these ideas kind of play out is that, and the other thing that I've also been thinking is to make it very clear to make clear to the viewer when something is staged and when something is maybe authentic, but to not get too attached to that. And I've been, for example, when we see media imagery that's from original sources, we always have a caption underneath the image to make it out from these different images that I've created. And then through these contradictions with the text and the images, to make it clear that it's me, in a sense, me who's narrating this story to the viewer. What's kind of interesting about the text material, especially, I think, is how, in a way, subjective many of it is. Like, this is an excerpt from texts from the police report where people remember the make of the car wrong. And this, for me, in this beginning, was an interesting detail, which I then kind of wanted to start to expand upon to show this uncertainty in the material, which then I found comes later in the book. These two images which were released by the police to the press were the which is of the car of the perpetrator, which they were looking for. And the two images, the white balance changes and the color of the car changes. So I want to kind of, instead of trying to say this is how it happened, to include this uncertainty into the material and kind of highlight the uncertainty in the documentary material as well. And my plans for the future is now to keep working on this dummy and to have a finished book, hopefully sometime soon in the future. But that's pretty much everything I had. So thank you.
Thank you, Henri. Thank you. Max, do you have any question for Henri?
Yeah, thank you, Henri. Yeah, I have a few questions. I mean, there is so many layers to this work that it's difficult to pick out one question to focus on. But I think what's interesting about this work is that it's a very personal. It's very close to you personally in terms of the story, but at the same time, it's also a larger reflection on a societal issue. And I think when looking at the work, you wouldn't immediately know that there's this personal connection, and it comes across as quite objective and quite distant through the reenactments, through the way you photographed it, through the way you brought together all this different material. But at the same time, I think it also says a lot about how you yourself imagine the narrative and how you've kind of reconstructed or recreated this story from your very deep personal experience to it. So that I think that's an interesting part about it, especially the details that you chose to focus on that become kind of hyper present in the narrative. So in a way, I think the distance and the objectivity that you've managed to capture, while at the same time in a kind of subversive way give away very personal things about it, comes together very well in the story. And I would ask, the question I would ask in this sense, in terms of the approach, is sometimes you've taken the liberty to, for example, make images that look like police footage or surveillance camera footage that you've kind of reconstructed, and other times you've used the actual police documentation. How far or how much room did you give yourself for interpretation or for manipulation when kind of recreating these seemingly authentic documents like this one, I believe? Or are they still based on kind of existing documents that you may have seen but not have had access to? Or maybe you can say something about the about that process in this line where you're kind of putting the viewer on a different path, or trying to create authenticity but actually staging it, let's say.
I think, yeah, it's a very interesting question, and it was a long process, especially with these staged kind of police imagery type images, which started off from the idea that I often found that the police images were kind of irrelevant from my perspective, that they focused on really irrelevant details on the case, that there's like pages and pages of documentation of things on the car, signs on the car and things like this. And that I kind of wanted to somehow, of course, like I need to make new images to bring those, that my point of view, like you talked about, into it. And then the other reason why I wanted to recreate the police images and not just make those the same way I've made the other images was to kind of destabilize somehow the documentary value of the police images in the final work, so that when the viewer looks at them, I thought that it would kind of take away from my staged images if there's just these police images in between where the viewer was like, okay, this is real, and then this is staged, and this is real, and they would disregard kind of my research and my images as something fictional, to kind of have this destabilization in there. And so that's why I wanted to have these images where in many of these images you can kind of clearly see that it's maybe an actor in the police images that I've recreated. So there is something that you can pick up visually, or the doubt that comes visually. And then there's also that there is not this caption next to the police images. And that way, I hope it would destabilize kind of these police images that the viewer is always on edge asking questions about what is this image kind of truthful, and what is and is not, and maybe focus more on the narrative that way.
Yeah, so creating a kind of equal ambiguity in the so-called authoritative documents. And then one last question, maybe, if you could meet the perpetrator or encounter the perpetrator, would you? And if so, would that also become part of the project?
That's because that's been a big part for me in this project. In a way, because I'm telling his story, and I think it can be said in the beginning here that I haven't actually met him ever, and this is kind of my interpretation of his story. But that was based in the beginning. My idea was to do it with him, to meet him and ask him to portray himself in the images. But of course, this is something that I've discussed a lot with my family when I've been making this project, about what they're comfortable with, because for them they have a lot of reservations, of course, about these things, and was something especially that my family was not comfortable with, of having him kind of in an active role somehow in this. So that's why into this I've done this without meeting him, but I would be interested to somehow meet him in this kind of late process too. I'm not quite sure yet what would be the questions that I would ask him, or if I would even include it in this, but I'm definitely kind of interested in that aspect. Yeah.
Thank you, Henri. Thank you. Not an easy question to answer, I'm sure. So we can go to the next speaker, which is Alexander Robertson. If Henri, can you stop the screen sharing? Yeah.
Hello, hi everyone. So I'm Alex Robertson. I'm a East London-based photographer. I'm coming from a background based in filmmaking before kind of going to university and studying a master's degree in documentary photography, which is where I actually began developing the project that I've been continuing to work on through the masterclass. So just to kind of explain a little bit about the subject of the actual project before kind of going on to it a little bit more. I live in a community of like warehouse dwellers that live in the shadows of the Olympic Park in East London that have been battling a story of gentrification since probably 2005, since London was granted the Olympics. And I started off by doing a portrait series of the community that I've been living with as a way to look at the individuals involved within the struggle in this gentrification process, but felt that I wanted to be able to develop it into something further. And I thought that the masterclass was a fantastic way to present, or was a fantastic way to be able to do something like that. So let me just share some of the work. So when we started off, it was in that kind of question of what would you like to produce? So I thought that it would work very well as say like a photo book kind of format. And the question would be like, who was it for? And throughout this process, it's to really develop something for the community. And in doing that, we've been looking, or I've been looking at materials that have been produced throughout the community as such that can be used as a tool within that kind of process. So at the moment, I've decided to go for a newspaper format and then to use something similar to what will be the Financial Times type of print, so that you're kind of also reappropriating these kinds of capitalistic aesthetics that can be kind of associated with kind of the development and gentrification as such within this kind of process of a anti-gentrification kind of movement as such. So through my process, trying to move beyond these kinds of portraits, which I still kind of will come back to at the end and is still part of the material itself, but I thought it was important to kind of develop a kind of a case study as such to try and formulate as a community a way to create a model, almost as it says in the title, to create a resistance against this kind of gentrification that's taking on. So through this, over the years, people have created different models to try and apply these, what are live work warehouses that have been turned from commercial buildings into actual lived in spaces illegally into viable structures within the traditional kind of housing system that they seem so far against at the moment. And it's interesting in a way to use these, as I feel, to later on use them as supportive material in our new venture in terms of trying to make sure that we can reclaim and maintain these buildings for a longer kind of perceived moment in time and actually become fully integrated within the community that we are still part of, or the wider community. So I'll also just show kind of, as it would be kind of structured as well, I've just kind of taken sections here just to kind of give like a little kind of run through today. So what I also would like to deal with is also looking at how the new community that's moving in is actually also reappropriating materials that were made before by these ones within these live workspaces, but they're using them in new ways, actually kind of celebrating this this gentrification process. And whilst we can accept that change is going to happen, I think as long as we're integrated, that's going to kind of become part of it. This isn't a movement as such against, it's very much a positive thing where all communities can kind of come together, or that's the idea within this idea of reclamation and taking some of the land back, or making sure that the land is properly managed by developers. And the thing is that this is a community kind of a participatory project now at the moment, in the sense that when I first started, it was a collaboration already between subject and photographer, but it's important to try and push that on and have other people become invested in it and to produce a body of work together that can try and create that kind of positive action. And as you can see within these bottom kind of images, some of this is by asking people who are within the community to present their feelings based on what reclaiming the area would mean to them, what the area means to them, and to provide them with another form of expression with this kind of handwritten engagement as well that would accompany this kind of newspaper as such, to make sure that it's engaging fully with the community that you're within. And these then play in with these portraits that I was talking about earlier, which is where the project had started, that were kind of using, let's say, my more of that filmmaking background that I mentioned beforehand, and using that mise-en-scène that I've been used to try and demonstrate people within these communities what they'd built, and to collaborate in a way to have them make sure that they felt that they were being expressed within their fullest, or their most kind of correct form. As you see, this picture here is very much my friend Callum. And it continues to kind of intertwine between these texts and the images. And I think it's kind of perhaps maybe important not to associate them together, so that it continues that kind of free-spirited kind of feeling that the community kind of invokes. And I just thought I would show you again some more of these kinds of wider kind of sections, so that you could see how it would kind of flow together. Now, I was talking earlier about the fact that it was a collaborative process, and I've also included and photographed myself within this experience as a way to kind of really push through that kind of message that I'm much as kind of part of the community and involved within it, and that I'm also kind of reflecting upon myself within this kind of process as well of creating this material, and trying to think about, I suppose, how I can kind of look upon myself as well and think about how I could do something within it, and that I am part of a wider group as well. I think perhaps in some ways what I might like to just finish off with in this terms of, again, I keep mentioning this word collaboration, but through this kind of process and this documentation, what we've also been able to do is actually engage with this community. And at the moment, this is still very much kind of a work in progress, in the sense that what we're also working on at the moment is there's going to be coming up to some local kind of council elections, and in terms of our trying to get some recognition within the area, we're wanting to use this as a kind of a tool to try and get someone within our community actually elected into one of the government or the local governmental kind of group, so that we can feel like we have a greater sense of representation. We kind of consider this to be something that we could share alongside that as a way to kind of like build our message, and to even then document those moments as well, to kind of continue that process in hand. So that will be a very exciting kind of way to kind of keep going for the future as such. I think I'd like to probably stop sharing it there, but perhaps open it up to questions. And
thank you, Alex. Thank you for sharing.
That's all right.
Thanks, Alex.
That's okay.
So the book that you've shown is the intent of it is that it's kind of gets distributed on in a high quantity.
Yeah, sorry, I probably should have mentioned that. That was actually one of my points, was to get a local kind of grant to actually be able to print it. And I live right next to the station, so the idea is to go out and just hand it out in the mornings, and to really push it through as a very much as just handed out on a very free basis, slapping in someone's hand, and
and it's interesting that you see it kind of as a political device to get somebody into the, to get the community more, or give it a place with some power in the community.
Yeah, I think perhaps there's kind of been this, I think when the project kind of started, there was this very much like a sense of disparity, or like, I'm actually watching out my window now and I can see a bulldozer demolishing a building. And so you have this kind of feeling that the destruction's happening, but it's like, whilst it feels like that might be a negative, it's like, how can you transform that into something positive? Like, if you don't give it a try, we might as well kind of, and I know that we're referencing in the beginning these different kind of moments where people have kind of attempted the same thing, but perhaps the world having gone through COVID and this changing kind of mindset, perhaps you'd like to be optimistic. I think it's a time to have optimism rather than pessimism. And I think that's something that's changed over the course of the work for me, as I've kind of been able to think about it and engage with it in a different kind of different kind of way.
Yeah. So, and are there more actions like this one within the same community, or is this photography project really the kind of way that this protest against gentrification is being brought out into the public sphere?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd just say that it would be a tool to kind of work alongside. So no, they're separate things, and it's like and that's that thing of just kind of collaborating together and working together to present it together.
Yeah, it's funny how the artists are always the beginning of the gentrification process.
Yeah,
it's good to.
We've spoken about that before as well. So.
Okay, thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Congrats. The next speaker is not live with us, so I will be sharing my screen to share her recorded presentation. And she's Lyan Olwaji from South Africa. So stay with me. Yes.
And I'm a visual storyteller from South Africa, and I'm super excited to be sharing some of my work with you today. I'm going to start by just giving you a general overview of my practice as an artist, and then I will jump in and show you the body of work that I've been developing over the course of the masterclass. So my work as a visual storyteller and artist is all about identity, collaboration, and celebration. And I'm very interested in using the medium of photography as a mode of co-creation and celebration. I think it's important to acknowledge the very violent and problematic history of photography in Africa. And I think the biggest problem is that a lot of the power in the image making process sits with the person pressing the button on the camera. And so when I make pictures, I like to hold space for the people that I work with so that we can co-create images that they feel tells their story in a way that is affirming and celebratory. And I think it's important to mention that when I started out as a photographer and a visual storyteller, my work came from a very naive place. And I think as photographers, if we think that when we make a picture of somebody, we are telling their story, that's a very naive thought, because essentially all we're doing is telling a very small part of their story through our lens. So when we make pictures, I think it's important to acknowledge everything that we bring to the image making process, or the people we've met, the places we've been, the things we believe. All of that shows up in that moment with you when you are making pictures. And once you're aware of that, I think it becomes easier to fully acknowledge it and to use that as a departure point when making images. So that's a little bit of an overview of what my work is about. And then next, I'm going to show you the project called The Right to Play. And it's a project that looks at girls' education. So around the world, around 129 million girls are out of school. And in many communities, the reason for this is child marriage or harmful traditional practices like female genital mutilation. So many girls will start out in primary school, and then when they reach around age 12, they will get married and they would no longer have the opportunity to finish their education. And so for this body of work, I wanted to depart from a traditional photojournalistic approach in addressing a very difficult social issue, and to rather create a body of work that creates a world that asks the question, what do girls dream of? And what does the world look like when girls are empowered and they're given the opportunity to dream and to thrive, and when they're not told from a very, very young age what their lives will look like, but they're allowed to dream of that for themselves. And so for this body of work, I partnered with a non-government organization called Kenya's Dream, which was founded by Dr. Kenya, and she herself was engaged at age 5. And then she was said to be married at age 12, but she convinced her father to let her finish her high school education and also to study. And so she had to get the permission of all the men in her community in Kenya where she grew up to go and study in the US. And they said to her, if you go, you need to come back and do something for your community. And she did exactly that. She went back to her community and founded Kenya's Dream, which leverages education to empower girls and transform communities in rural Kenya. And so when I was in Kenya making portraits of the girls, it was very important for me to hold space for them and to see what came out of that. And it was so fantastic to see how confident the girls are. They walked in and they knew exactly what they wanted to do, where they wanted to stand. Did they want to stand on top of a chair? Did they want to sit down? And they completely owned the space. And it was actually really, really easy to work with them. And I think that is what is so important about Kenya's Dream in the school, is that it really empowers girls and it gives them a sense of confidence. And it was wonderful to see that in the images. And then when I went back home to South Africa, I printed the photographs and I continued working with them, placing flowers on them and really photographing them to create this playful world. And to continue this idea of what do girls dream of, and this theme of empowerment and play and joy and fun, and showing girls looking incredibly empowered. And so when I first started the project, I had the idea of covering their faces with the flowers to speak about the loss of identity that comes with child marriage. And then as I was developing the work, with the help of Max, I decided to still do that to a degree, but to rather show their faces, especially in the portraits where they were looking so incredibly empowered. And I think that's the important thing as artists, is often when we start a project, we have a very set idea of what it needs to look like. And I think it's important to be open to synchronicity and to be open to the project guiding you in a particular direction and showing you what the story is actually about. And that was one of the great lessons while developing the work, that it was a really cool process to just get an understanding of how do we tell stories and to not get stuck and hold on to ideas that we start out with. So that's me. Thanks for joining. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. You can find my work at lyanolwaji.com or send me a message on Instagram. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Lyan. So, I mean, we cannot ask a question to Lyan, unfortunately. So we're gonna move to the next speaker, which is Camila Marrese and Gabriele Chiapparini, an Italian duo.
Hello, hi everyone. I am Camila Marrese, an Italian photographer and designer, and this is Gabriele Chiapparini.
I'm a video director.
Whereas I followed this masterclass myself, the work that I brought in was always developed in collaboration with Gabriele, so this is why together we are presenting together today. I'm gonna give the presentation while Gabriele is gonna manage the visual part. I would say that our practice is based on photography and other visual tools, as indeed tools to trying to understand and go deep some specific phenomena or situation that are related to very specific questions that we share. Today, the project that we are going to present is called 1033. So I will start by sharing the screen. Okay, so please let me know if you see it.
Abbassero proprio anche quello.
Yeah, okay. So 1033 is a project that merges photography, graphic interventions, and short videos. It starts from the story of an airplane crash, and it mixes it with a personal memory of one of us that also relates to flying and to the idea of loss. These are the two starting points from which we started reflecting about chance, coincidence, and about those lines that cross all of our lives. In broadest terms, we could say that this is a project about time, and it is an attempt to build a relationship with tragic events, trying to bring them back to their most everyday dimension. As this is a work in progress, the presentation will merge research material and produce material, as the goal is that of sharing the most that we can out of our thinking process and the questions that we are trying to find answers to. We'll start by presenting the story a bit, and then we will be talking about the different methods that we employed in order to deal with it. So, on December 6, 1990, at 10:33 a.m., a military aircraft crashed into the window of a class of Salvemini High School in Casalecchio di Reno, near to Bologna, our city in Italy. The crash killed 12 15-year-olds and wounded 88 more. The cause of this accident was an engine failure, and at the moment of the crash, the pilot was not on board anymore. He had indeed ejected himself at 10:31:40, and the ejection caused a change in the direction of the airplane. Therefore, the airplane had flight for 80 seconds without any control, and then precisely entered the window of this class. One day of May, at the beginning of 2000, Gabriele here was on an airplane that was shaken by a violent storm. A few days earlier, the mother of a friend had foreseen that the plane that he would have taken would have crashed. But then she added that it had been a long time since her dreams weren't coming true anymore, so that they could have taken the flight without any consequence. It was the first time for Gabriele in which she felt like one of those events that we always hear talking about could actually happen to him. He was 100% sure that the airplane would fall. Starting from here, mixing the two events and talking about this together, some questions started to rise for us. And it was mainly about the way we read news, the fact that we read news, we look at pictures on our screens, and we felt like we can't really elaborate them, as if the paper of newspapers and the screens were physical borders separating us from them, as if us and them were actually living in different environments, answering to different physical laws. And when this happens, when it happens that something actually hits us personally, we are not prepared. We feel like it is impossible that something is happening to us, whereas on the other hand, it is actually quite probable. With this project 1033, we asked ourselves how and if it is possible to overcome this distance between us and them, bringing those events back to the most everyday and collective dimension, and bringing them back to what they are, just lines that cross everybody's lives. With this question in mind, we worked merging different perspectives, and we realized that in the end, they were all exercises, all experiments to try to get close to the stories. They were all empirical attempts to erase those lines that separate us from them. One approach that we went deep into was that of the archive. We started analyzing archives about this specific event, and we started to see how, in our opinion, those tragic images had a sort of distancing potential. They were showing a sort of spectacularized aftermath. And in this way, it was very hard to see that just a second before, everything was completely ordinary. So the way we wanted to deal with this, to show how ordinary actually tragedy can be, was through zooming in. So we decided to really zoom in and crop those archive images, isolating very specific details in the aim of making them more relatable. So we have a lot of hands and really small parts of those images that make them more banal in a way. And also we had the same approach with text. So basically, starting from interviews and from newspaper articles, we highlighted very banal and everyday sentences that could help us feel more close to this sort of event. We put this material all together in a reporello in which everything flows in a sort of circle, as if in this dimension, this story was going on forever in a sort of loop. We decided to bring on this approach of coming closer and closer to the archive material with an exhibition that we had, a part of it. A part of it was this photograph, this archive photograph printed on a very big surface, so that the photograph actually was disgregating in its matter, and coming really close, all you could see was pixels, was the newspaper noise becoming also something similar to the TV static noise. And for us, through this approach, we wanted to show the limitation of trying to understand, of trying to get close and to touch, as images are something that we can only look at and not really dig into them. And when challenged, they show themselves for what they truly are in the end, so pixels and noise. We also worked with documents. We analyzed documents of this event and we tried to make new ones. We started to reconstruct dynamics from facts, trying to go the closest that we could to an understandable collection of what really actually happened. And in this way, we sort of wanted to also touch the shortcomings of information, making a very clean and informational aesthetic collide with something that actually escapes this very rigid analysis. We analyzed the video of the airplane falling, which is actually the only witness that is there about those moments of free fall. And we wanted to isolate the frame and trying to think about a lot of what ifs. So what if the wind had been slightly different? What if the atmospheric pressure was different? So basically we analyzed this document of collective memory as a very relative and a very imprecise one. So these graphics that you see are an analysis of the video. So the surface of it is the frame. And in every frame, we highlighted the relative position of the airplane and of the pilot. And what we see is that in this cloud of isolated perceptions, the pilot is going away from the aircraft. We also worked, of course, with photography in the end. And basically, at the very beginning, what we were doing with photography was chasing a feeling. And then in the process, we realized that what we wanted to do was to reflect on a relationship between time and those events that cut all of our lives in two. So basically, all these photographs show some breaking points, some states of balance, and they are attempts to grasp eventfulness. We wanted to think about the fact that we actually are crossing lines all of the time. Basically, things are changing their status constantly. And if we try, as we have been doing, to break down the continuum of time, what we find is a sequence of discrete points, of discrete lines. And sometimes what happens is just that some of them become sharper and something that didn't matter at all suddenly starts to matter. For example, when we find ourselves on a very specific point in time and space, or when two different elements come together and crash in a situation of coincidence. So we will show some of the images again. We were interested also in working together with text and images. So this is why you have those sentences at the side. We wanted to create this collaboration between images and text to talk about those feelings. And in the end, something that we would like to do would be started working more on sequences. So for example, we started reflecting about the seconds in which the aircraft flew without the pilot on it, so those times of total absence of control. And for example, we were thinking of maybe working with that exact number of seconds to create some installations with photographs that repeat the same situation for 80 times, for example, in this case. We started believing in this approach as a way to realize that actually us and them are not different, but we do swim in the same waters. And we really wanted to highlight this and to erase this difference that we always build between us and them and show that we are the same, as we believe that creating this distance is on the one hand wrong as related to victims, and on the other hand also as related to us, because we keep living in this sort of immortal status that we create for ourselves, and that doesn't really allow us to understand the present and really feel the present. So I think this is it, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Camilla, Gabriele. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, great presentation. Good teamwork. Yeah, I think what the question that came up for me is that the work that you're doing is maybe a way to rationalize coincidence, or to kind of get a grasp on how chance can happen through the documentation of all the details that occurred, and indeed asking yourself the what if questions. What if things were different? Would it have turned out different? But at the same time, you're also dealing with a very particular event that did happen, in which there's some kind of tragedy around it. And do you see the project for you as, my question would be, is there a way of rationalizing coincidence or grasping a chance event or a freak accident? Or is it some way for you to say or to relate to an event in a way that you can say, these things can happen and this is a way that we can deal with them, even though we cannot control them?
It is this, I would say, is trying to deal with them, to create a relationship with them and to reduce this distance between us and those events. And the fact of rationalizing them, I think it's a strategy that we employed to get closer, but also then to demonstrate the shortcoming of this strategy itself. So the fact that actually, in the end, as much as you can rationalize, you can't really grasp the meaning of things and the reason why something happened right in the same moment as something else or right after. So I think it was a whole process made also of rationalizing and denying the same rationalization in order to get closer.
Yes, what happened with the newspaper and television a lot of time is that the big question is why. A lot of time they ask why happened this, and you can find a lot of explanation finally, like the pilot of the military jet make some mistakes and stuff like that, but finally we will never have the answer why the airplane in that 80 seconds just flying around alone, just center in a so precise way that window. I think it's, I don't know, it's scaring and fascinating at the same time. It's, I don't know.
It's a way of coping with the inevitable fact that you're going to die at the end of the day somehow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Precisely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Max.
Thank you again, Camilla, Gabriele. So we are moving to the last speaker for today, which is Emilio Nasser.
Hello, everybody. I'm gonna share my screen. I want to do just a small introduction. So since I am based right now in Switzerland. I born in Spain, but my parents come from Argentina. I born during my parents' side during a long time ago. So I was moving all the time. So one of the main things that I was interested in during the time that I was doing photography was this meaning of belonging and identities, and then I crossed to see how retell some stories, and then I come back again because I went to live in Mexico, and then one of the things that I want to share with related with this project is because I want to, through this project, the Cornudo de Tracotapan was a story that I found in Mexico, and then was a way, an old story, a legend. So the way, my main thing was to how I can retell myth or local stories in a new way, in a new context, in 21 contexts, and the complexity of this context. So the project I want to share with you is Le Bateau Fantôme. That means the magical boat or the phantom boat. And so now she look at my other screen, no? The mapping research?
No, we are still looking at the website.
Sorry, I made it again. So I want to do like a small introduction. So I started this project really from the scratch, and it was really difficult to find ways to retell this story, because this documentary project, apart from the human longing for a better place, since I moved again to Switzerland, I was thinking about these things and how to deal with that. And then I found this story who live in the Lac Léman in Geneva, but I am based in Zurich. Since this story tells us about a boat that, if you are lucky enough to see it, maybe can give you can grant you with a wish. So this is imaginary desire is like the starting point to start to thinking about what is home, what meanings have home, and the multiplicity of that. So then I find a school who has a very interesting story, who is a school who is a grassroots movement here in Zurich, and emerged in 2008, and was during the struggle of new asylum law, and was a kind of project to bring made by locals and migrants, trying to create like a free German class that the people can fight for their rights and make their asylum petitions in a better way. And then the school was, the history of the school is a story of resilience, because they have to move all the time. Squatting in location is part of their identity, and then becomes a kind of platform to talk, and then that illegalization people and are represented, they can play an active role in voicing their demands. So I start to collaborate with them. So this is one of the main part of the project. It's a collaborative project. So they print once a year this papierlose Zeitung, that means sans papier, so undocumented newspaper, something like that. And through different collaborative approach, I start to think about how to tell the story about this myth related with the school and the people who is joining the school, and how they ask about, how they try to find a way to answer that question at home in a new country. So one of the parts of the story was this hat that is related with the legend, because the legend is about a boat, and the hat is a boat, a huge boat, and then the people can just use the boat that's not only to use it as a safe place to show what they thought or what they want to say, and also to share their notion of home. And the main thing in the beginning, I start to draw some ideas of how to deal with these things, because also I was thinking about a lot of time, even if I'm now in a privileged position. I was also a refugee one long time ago, but now I was thinking about how I can just how this project can come back to the people involved. So looking back in the history of the school, looking in their traces. So I was looking in Zurich. I came back to all the places with people who was part of the school or who were still active in the school, and then we started to find ways to rephotograph these places in some way. So also, thank you for the school. There was more awareness about all the issues and the struggles about these invisible borders that are related when you move to another country, and then you need to cross all the lines to belong to this new place that never will be your place, actually. So at the end, because I was like overwhelming with all these layers that becomes, because also racism is very common for those who are rejected asylum seekers, who remained looking for a place, and still they cannot come back to their places, so they remain here. So was difficult to find ways, and then and at some point I have like the interviews when they wrote the ideas of home or the places, the traces, and the drawings, and I found out that maybe the best way to tell the stories is through the video, and that is one I want to share with you. Is the last version. That's kind of a van premiere. Not really, but I need to really find ways. And with the video also was where we are thinking about how to use the video. So also my question always when I move on with the project is asking to the people involved in the project or in the school, how we can make these pictures useful in some way. So I share again, and this is like a 4 minutes video. So in some way, the project seeks to interconnect the Swiss myth of a wish granting a vote, the invisible traces of a space for illegalized people, and the voices that made in the crossroads of the Swiss-European migration policies.
De nombreuses légendes sont racontées. L'une d'entre elles est l'ancienne légende du bateau miraculeux. Depuis des temps très anciens, on dit qu'à certains jours particuliers, on pouvait voir un bateau magique sur le lac. Et si vous aviez la chance de l'apercevoir, un de vos vœux allait se réaliser. Les gens passaient alors des jours et des nuits entiers sur les bords du lac, désireux d'apercevoir le bateau magique et de voir leurs souhaits se réaliser.
So one of the idea of this video is to do like 4 chapters. In each chapter, we'll try to talk about something. In this film, it's about the interview.
C'est la première fois que vous venez en Suisse?
Non.
Et alors, je vais vous expliquer un petit peu ce qui va se passer pour votre procédure d'asile. Aujourd'hui, vous allez avoir une première audition qui est courte. Par la suite, vous aurez une deuxième audition qui sera beaucoup plus longue. C'est seulement après cette deuxième audition que vous prendrez une décision sur votre demande.
If you feel all right in your body, your home is where you are right now. But the body is the vehicle of your soul.
Also, the video, what I found it really cool in the video is that I really can hear and they can really voice in their demands, also their ideas. So this collaborative balance maybe become more right.
نه عربم نه ایرانیم نه ترکێکی شاخستانیم نەک من هەر خۆم بێژوش ئەڵێ کە کوردم و کوردستانیم کە کوردم و کوردستانیم.
Since the video is ongoing, it's still a lot to do, especially with the songs.
Ka'an kami yiɗa mi yiɗi, kami teddina mi teddini, kami hoyɗata, kami muññinte, kami moƴƴinta, kami tafata, ka'an kami gollata, kami ukkiti, ka'an kami hulata, ka'an kami welti.
Durant cette procédure, on vous fait confiance. Et on vous demande de répondre à cette confiance en collaborant avec nous et bien sûr en disant la vérité. Si vous dissimulez certains faits ou si on découvre que vous avez menti sur vos déclarations, le contrat de confiance est rompu et bien sûr on entre en matière sur la demande. Alors maintenant, je vais vous demander de résumer les raisons qui vous ont amené à quitter votre pays. Un résumé court, hein?
So that's it.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emilio.
I hope I was clear.
Yeah. So the school is a kind of, the school or the center is a kind of nomadic space that doesn't have a set building or location. It's always moving, right?
Yeah, since the beginning was moving through Zurich, through different places. Also was good because it was an alliance with squatting groups. But now since 4 or 5 years, they are still in the same place. But also because it's a project and on the move, or a movement, it's always they are always thinking about from here to where, and also rethinking what the project is or for what. Especially now after the pandemic, and when many things happen around, and now the project start to think about what is our position as a political emancipatory project.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. If you think about how you would like to realize the project in the future, it together with this nomadic center. I mean, of course, there's probably no direct answer for it, but do you see it becoming part of their cause, or the way they profile themselves, or the way they try to establish themselves as a center, or the members of it?
Yeah, I think especially right now, because this Papierlose, for example, this newspaper will be printed the 1st of May. We are organizing some different things, and so for the new, I will print like an update of the project, and the good thing is like someone will write about the project related with what is going on around. So the question also is how we are thinking about how we can use the project or the pictures to make it more visible the school, or to make more visible all the struggles around.
Yeah. And the institutions, because we were talking also about the kind of privatized institutions that work against migration, or put in the infrastructure to stop people from moving around. Is the other side something that you'd be incorporating in the project as well, or would you keep it from the perspective of the school and the?
No, this is one of the things. For me, with the video, was more easy to talk about those things, like for example, what is going on with Frontex in the border of Europe, but also what is happening inside of the borders, like this privatization of care, like private companies are like managing all these camp centers, and all this, the constitution of this privatization of care have a lot of impact also in the, not only in the social workers, because every time less people want to work in that places, but also because some of the construction, they paint a picture of the places like a welcome to here, when behind that happen many things. And this is the good thing for me with the school, that give me this awareness of these invisible things. And working together with others organizations, we're more involved in that. So this is the project. The idea is that to make a bridge in between those things.
Okay, nice. Thank you, Emilio.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Emilio. And and thank you all of you for today and for the past 8 months. Has been for me and for everyone, I think, an emotional journey to meet each other better week after week, month after month. And I think that all of you achieved what we first envisioned with, together with Max and Giuseppe, when we started to create this path, this educational path with Criticae, which is, developing a project, but at the same time trying to not reply with answer, but putting even more question to each specific personal thematic, which are touching a personal sphere, but also a more broader thematic, from migration to death to in general thematic, let's say. So I want to just say a big congratulations to everyone, and special thanks to Max for being with us with these 8 months. Also, as you all know, one of more projects will be shown at PhMuseum Lab later this year. So we decided to feature 2 projects this year, because both of them are creating a very interesting dialogue on current team that are interplaying with the boundaries that documentary and fiction can generate. So some reason are for sure the strength of the proposal, the fact that they're showing personal involvement with the research, and for sure the sophistication of the image making and also the visual outcome. So in terms of the book or exhibition. So I don't want to wait even longer, and I wish to announce the three recipients of the prize, which are Camilla Marez and Gabriele Chiapparini and Henri Airo. Congratulations. You are free to say something.
We didn't expect it at all,
Really?
so amazing.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So
We are super happy, and it's been a really great journey all together, and with Max also seeing all the projects developing, it was great. So wow, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really surprised as well. But yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. And also thanks to all of you guys. It's been really great, like 8 months, and I feel like I got so much from all of you guys during this time. So yeah.
Okay, so it's time to organize the exhibition. Let's try not to be in the position we are today, because we are opening in less than 48 hours, and this is the situation. For the next show, let's try to work with sometimes in advance. But no, I wish to congratulate you. It's going to be a pleasure to work together. I left Rocco and Max, conducting the class over these 8 months, but I've been following with Rocco the development of them, and it's truly great to exhibit a couple of them here in our place. It's a very special place for us. It took us 10 years to have a physical base, and we are excited to share this story with our community here in Bologna. And it's great that something that started online with bright minds from all over the world will have a kind of presentation here in Bologna. So thank you all. I'm sure there is a little bit of each one of you in the work of the other, and it's really great. And thank you, Max. We want to anticipate that we'll soon be presenting the second edition of Criticae, and Max is taking a year off, but we are happy to announce the new professor for next year, that is going to be Laura El Tantawi, and it's the first time we say so. So yeah, and maybe Max will talk for 2024. But yeah, so great. It's been an honor.
Yeah, thank you everyone for the really nice experience, and I also really look forward to seeing where your projects go in the future.
Yeah, it's the beginning, no?
Mm.
After so much work, we'll try to help you all, and I'm sure there's gonna be good recognition for them.
Yeah.
So thank you again, everyone, and thank you to the public which followed us on YouTube live today. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.